Welcome to Sheni. Welcome to Sheni V'Chamishi. See, I reserved a bike because I didn't know if there would be any bikes left, but this lady's bringing one. So anyway, I have to go to the great story. Never easy. I'm listening to this piyutim from the Moroccan, old Moroccan nusach. And you know, the whole shir hashirim is so beautiful. I had a friend, he is a Bal Teshuva. Years ago, I used to live here, and years ago he would wake me up for nets very early. And he was this kind of guy, like very into the service of God, but he wasn't an academic of types, of any sort, you know. He didn't understand the intellectual stuff, so he decided one day he's going to go to yeshiva. And yeshiva, he was going to go to Pinto in Manhattan. You know, of course he liked the Rebbe. We went, actually one time we went straight to Simchas Torah, an all-night for Brangen. And we went to, we got in a cab and he jumped on the flight with us last minute. It costed more money, that type of irrational. And, you know, believed in the Rebbe, but we went to Pinto. And Pinto also, they don't have a problem with the Rebbe in there. It's in Manhattan on Lexington. Very pricey piece of real estate. They had a building there. So I went to visit him in the yeshiva, and he wasn't learning. He was working in the kitchen. Hi. How are you? So we, yeah, here I am. I'm going to my tzitzis is right here, if you could see it. This shirt was designed by a Japanese designer, teamed up with a French designer, and he put these little strings on the edges, and I found out that he's actually doing a design based on what priests wore, which is tzitzis. Anyway, so, Shalom Aleichem. Hi. So, Yidden, tourists from New York, Yankee fans. So, okay, so that's a story. It's unfortunate. He felt like the only way he could connect with his Judaism and be a proper Bal Teshuva is if he learns Torah. Believe it or not, one time, this is the type of head he had. One time in shul, he once said to me, I'm going to go to New York, I'm going to become big in the Torah, and you're going to give me a lot of kavod. Everybody's going to give me kavod. And this guy was like 2 years older than me. He liked fancy cars, of course, talking about kavod. You know, you need to have, especially Los Angeles, he liked Aston Martin and Bentley. He always would drive these cars. I'm not sure, if, you know, doesn't matter if he owned it or not, but the story is that he comes back, and of course it doesn't last forever. And then you know, back and forth, growing hair, cutting it, looking more yeshiva style with a hat and jacket. And then one day he calls, I get a, you know, a voice note from him, and he's like very solemn, serious, you know. I heard you married a shikhteh. And I'm like, listen, I did what the, you know, you're talking to, and this is very interesting. Usually, you know, you always want to know what your grandmother's going to think and your neighbor, and then we, a lot of times, live our lives doing things that make no sense because it just fits. It fits with what everybody's expecting. His cousin, your aunt, your mother. So, but now, the job is, it's a little more difficult, but it's worth it, is to explain to the guy that it's okay and it's kosher. So how do you do that? So you tell him, I spoke to the Rav, the Paisik, and I did exactly what the Paisik said to do. And that's how you talk to a simple-minded, borderline fanatic in terms of explaining any natural phenomena that is something that he's not used to and not expected. Hi. Hi. How are you? So that's how you, you know. And then that stayed at that. But this is the great part of the story, is that he couldn't learn. And then I started being interested in these old piyutim. And a lot of what was lost after the Spanish expulsion, the Jewish expulsion from Spain, and the Muslims were expelled from Spain by the crazy, it was Isabella or whoever else, the church. So I was listening to the piyut, and I was trying to actually learn it and trying to know how it's, you know, exactly how to chant it and all that. And I sent him the link, and I said to him, you know, we could learn this piyutim and we can teach it in shul, because not many people know how to chant. And this is a very important part of the heritage. And that made him so happy. He was like, what are you talking about? Now I could teach, because usually in the shul, what do you have? Dvar halacha. And he can't study these laws. He doesn't have the lawyer brain. When to pray, and when to pray, and when to wash, and how to wash, and what if there's a piece of shit in the room? Could you pray? He's not into that. So what is he, it's not his thing, he can't do it, he's not talented that way, so he felt excluded. And then I figured out that he's definitely a passionate guy, and with this chanting, with the piyutim, it's something that's very valuable, very important, and it's a lot of fun. And as a matter of fact, it's more important than halacha, because the halachas vary, as do the piyutim. But the piyutim can be lost. The halachas, it really doesn't matter if you washed your hands and prayed or not. But these are things that we took from the temple as a memory, just like a lulav and estig. It's a temple practice. And it's a harvest thing. It's for farmers. So what are you doing in Los Angeles coming to shul with a lulav and estig if you're not a farmer and you don't have a temple? As a memory. That's why Judaism is known as a religion of memory. We keep the memories alive. So, gonna grab a coffee. There's a really good place for coffee here. Let me interrupt. So the story is the boy, this young man, the Bal Teshuva, he goes on and off, you know, on the derech, off the derech, dressing like a yeshiva bacher, black hat and a suit and a white shirt, and then going to, he's a bodybuilder, he's a good looking guy, and he would have this cool haircut, go back. And one time I get a message from him and he says, you know, I'm doing what you're doing, like I took your advice, like I'm taking your lead, I'm going with an Asian now. Taiwanese or girl or some of that, and really pretty girl and everything, goes shopping in his Bentley, and he's like looking all, you know, what could you ask? And I had to get my revenge back on him, not make him feel guilty. He was shopping on Shabbos and all that, but I had to get my revenge, and I said to him, a Yid is not let it go with a Taiwanese, only Japanese, because the Japanese are the Melachim, the Taiwanese the Avadim. And just like the Israelites oppressing the Canaanites, so the Japanese during their wars, they were winning over other peoples, oppressing. So I made it like this, you know, this feeling of superiority that you could find it in the history of Judaism, but at the same time there's a feeling of being on the losing end and being the little people and the oppressed. But I said, oh, you can't, you have to marry, you're not allowed to marry them, they're the oppressed, and you have to only marry the elites. And he was a simple mind, but really, of course, the Shabbos, I would never make him feel guilty. Someone did that at a party where there was a Chabadnik, and he took an Uber on Shabbos, but he's still arguing for some valid points in religion or whatever it is, or the Rebbe. And my friend said, but you took an Uber on Shabbos. And I said to my friend, that's pointless. That's not going to help him, and it's not going to help anybody. Because the fact that he took an Uber on Shabbos is not something that he can convince someone else. If he can't convince someone else, he can't convince himself, and eventually he's never going to be able to get out of his delusions. So, but what do you do in a case where someone has a simple mind and gets angry? So we have so many people to impress and so many people to answer to. So really, the way we got in is the way you get out. It's the religion after the destruction was started by rabbis, and the rabbis are the ones that could fix it. They have the authority. So you say, I spoke to a posek, and of course you speak to the most educated posek, and they'll admit to you that all of this is just customs in human imagination throughout the ages. Which God to worship, what type of God, what type of image to have of this God, what type of theology, how many times to wash your hands, what practices to borrow from the temple. One boy recently asked me about tzitzis. Why don't you wear tzitzis? Now, the honest answer is because I'm secular. But what about a religious answer? It's a religious question. Why can't I answer like a religious, in a religious spirit? So I had to explain to him that tzitzis is just for the temple, for priests. And we borrowed it, and just like washing hands in the home is something borrowed from the temple and many other things. So he says, but why don't you wear it anyway? So because we're in redemption time. As one Meshachist boy who had a huge beard, and he was getting all frum, you want to call it, but in the light of the Rebbe's latest sicha, so he was saying, redemption time, do what you want. So that's really the spirit of Bal Shem Tov and Shabsai Tzvi, which is a more Kabbalistic, spirit-infused type of theosophy, spirituality, which if you do it right, and you do it in a fully artistic way, and you express yourself as you wish, then you're good. But if it turns into your need to control others and create dogma, then again, it's back to the problem of religion again. But I did joke with him and got my little revenge, and then I said, you know, oh, you got the wrong type, you know, yeah. And then and obviously in his case he's not marrying her, he's just shtupping her, which he thinks is okay, right? Think about that. So we're not really anti shiksa, we're anti-happiness and marriage. We don't hate the gays, we hate the recognition and the happiness and the comfort that they get, because for some people that bothers them deeply. The haunting, like they say about Puritans, the haunting thought that someone somewhere is happy.